Larry Scott from Think Fast Records, doing this interview from my house in Estero, Florida. Basically, I do Think Fast Records on the side, as well as I take part in a social work career that I've been doing for 11 years, working with kids who are abused and abandoned. And basically, that's basically all I do. I do work with kids, and then I also help run the label that I founded back in 2001. And just happy to talk to our friends out in Asia, where we've gained a lot of support and everything. And thanks for having me. Basically, Think Fast Records started in September of 2001. I founded the label with my friend Charles, who went on to play in bands such as No Harm Done, Make or Break. He also runs Get Out of Town Records. We started the label back then just to basically help our friends, on a small level, help like these upcoming bands that were like in our area, to get their name out and to promote bands that we were into. Never thought that starting this label as a hobby would turn into what it's turned into at this point. So basically, again, when we started doing layouts and planning releases from inside a Kinko's copy place in Florida, just like making handmade, layouts and everything, and just trying to get, these small releases out to bands that we were friends with. And then soon after, we realized, wait a second, we can actually do this for real and put out legitimate records of bands that we love. And from day one, this label wasn't going to be about putting out trendy, flavor of the week bands that we knew would definitely catch on, or be overhyped and whatnot. We were going to put out bands that we supported, that we loved, that we had, that we thought had a message that we wanted to help promote. And so every release since the first release has been bands that we 110% back. We will never put out a band that doesn't have the substance or the sincerity that we look for in a punk or hardcore band.
This is what we believe! This is what we believe!
Well, basically, like I just said, too, we wanted to start the label by helping out bands that we supported and that we loved, even if they were smaller bands. Soon, we started basically networking, like, hardcore bands and labels do, to find new bands like around the country and even all over the world, and basically, basically turning it into even more established bands over time as we built up our reputation as a label, trying to help out bands that stood for something. And so not only did we find bands from all around the country, but we started looking worldwide, and that's when we found the Geeks, which from South Korea, and basically that band is the epitome of what Think Fast Records is all about. When I started the label, they encompass everything that I wanted in a band: the sincerity, the message, and just the fact that they're some of the greatest people we've ever met. That's what makes the label, what it is and who we want to promote. So, yes, it started as a hobby. Yes, we want to be able to keep going and put out as many bands as possible and help out other bands and stuff like that. But again, it wasn't about getting the flavor of the week band. It wasn't about getting the overhyped band at the time that people were just into, that had absolutely no substance to it. Just like some kids some band that kids jocked all the time to say, their friend's band or some clique in some scene that everyone was supposed to be about. That's not what this label's about. This label was about, if we put out a straight edge band, it was about finding the most sincere straight edge band we could possibly find that stood behind what they said, and even other bands. You know, we don't put out just straight edge bands, but you know, bands that meant what they said, had something to say, and wasn't just writing about stupid things that meant nothing. We feel that hardcore, and kids in hardcore, even if you have, you know, whatever opinion you have or belief you have, you should at least have the integrity that, you know, you really believe it and you stick with it. And we don't want some band just putting together, you know, some songs that sung about absolutely nothing. That's one of, I think, the problem with a lot of bands. You know, there's always bands like that too, but we really search for that band that has the substance that we want to help promote as a label. Early on, when we started searching for bands, sometimes it was kids that we were friends with, or bands that we toured with, like that we were into and stuff, that we knew about them, so we would put them out. But now, of course, we get demos all the time from bands around the country and everything like that. But it kind of takes a little bit more at this point, because it is so costly to put out a record, and we want to be able to put everything we have into a record. So basically, when we put out a band now, we want to see that band is a hard-working band that takes the initiative to promote themselves as well, like get out there, tour, you know, just do things to help get their name out and stuff like that, that are not going to just, you know, wait and hope that kids are into them. This is kind of like a team. I think we work with these bands to try to, you know, get the exposure for them. And basically, if a band's not going to put in, you know, 100% to, you know, get behind their own music, then why should we get behind their music as well? We want bands to take the initiative and have ambition to, you know, to hit the road and tour and you know, take time and write quality songs and recordings that kids will be into.
It's time to serve and take. Appreciate what we have.
Like I said before, I did found Think Fast Records with my friend Charles, but you know, a couple of years later, Ryan O'Connor, who sings for Outbreak, he started helping us out. He was doing a website called xryanx.com. It was an awesome website. They used to do reviews. They used to do reviews for all these different bands, you know, different 7 inches and you know, demos that came out. And basically, he reviewed one of my band's demos, my band Flame Still Burns, and so we got to talking about that, and then we ended up meeting. This was early on when Outbreak started and was starting to play out and everything. And we met at one of the Posse Members festivals in Pennsylvania, and he had been doing a little like website work for us to help us out, and then soon after that, he did more and more stuff. Soon after Charles had left the label, and Ryan basically came on full-time with me, and so that's why, like, you know, we're co-owners of the label. This label, like, we really, really worked hard to try to get, you know, established and everything and put out good records. But when Ryan came along, it's almost like it went to, like, the next level. He has, like, so much desire, and, like, he knows, like, just by being in a band, touring and everything, we think that we offer something to bands, because we've been in bands, especially Ryan, like, touring all over the world. He knows what bands expect, and what, you know, what they should, you know, the respect that they should deserve as being a band on a label and everything. So when he signed on, basically we started doing more and more stuff. He's our website guy. He helps design shirts. He does everything, but him and I now co-own the label. And we also have Jensen, who works for Revelation Records. She started a couple years ago just doing kind of like freelance stuff to help us promote the label and our bands, and also to help us out with some other like things, you know, to help run the label smoothly. when the label started, we, did everything, sent out every order ourselves, and had the web store go right through our site. But now, a few years after we started, we were in contact with Merch Now in New York, and they basically started running our web store because basically we were able to team up with Merch Now to provide more shirts and merchandise for all the bands and for kids to support, because without them it would have been difficult to have kind of a variety of stuff, and also the amount of orders and everything for myself and Orion to do just got to a level that we couldn't even handle it, and we couldn't handle it anymore. And we pride ourselves in the fact that when we put out a record or we get an order, we want that thing out immediately. You know what I mean? Sometimes we would send out orders same day or next business day. We don't want kids waiting for our stuff 6 months. So basically, Ryan lives up in Maine, which is 1,500 miles away from where I live. So he was doing the day-to-day operations, that he did there. I was putting together the records and shipping out all the orders and everything. And he would fly down to Florida and help me get out pre-orders in a timely fashion for new records that were coming out. But again, it got to such a point that it's just him and I basically running the day-to-day operation that we needed some help getting the records out and to get some variety. So we teamed up with Merch Now to be able to get our orders out, and we were able to do a lot more package deals or different pre-order ideas for our new releases, and it helps. So that's basically our team. It's me and Ryan run the day-to-day operations. Jenny helps out with help managing some of the miscellaneous things of the label or helping us promote, and then Merch Now helps us with our web store. And also Revelation Records is our distributor, and they've been basically since our really early releases, we teamed up with them too to help distribute our releases worldwide as well. As for our best-selling releases, probably one of our most classic records that I think we've done was the first EP for Have Heart, What Counts. We did the 7-inch and CD for that record, and that was one of our biggest sellers. Obviously, Have Heart went on to be one of the biggest straight-edge bands of our time, of the last decade. Just blew up worldwide and everything, and signed to Bridge 9 and whatnot. Also, we've done a lot of records for Outbreak that have done really well, and Far From Finished, Living in the Fallout, that was a really good seller that we put out. But also, just to add to it a little bit, those were, Have Heart, that was our, we put out their first record. Far From Finished and Outbreak were a little bit more established when we started working on them, but then also some of our best sellers were doing the vinyl releases for Sick of It All, for Ignite, and for Turning Point. Those were some of our best sellers by far, and also the New Earth Crisis that just came out as well. Some of the common problems for the smaller label are basically bands breaking up real quick. Also, there's a huge change in the entire music industry, and it's affected, punk and hardcore as well, because you used to put a lot of money into getting CDs pressed and stuff. We haven't pressed a new release on CD in over 2 years. We're absolutely done pressing CDs. We do vinyl with digital downloads, and that's it. CDs have gone by the wayside, and we predict that they'll be completely gone soon. So we don't. We pumped a lot. Some labels can pump a lot of money into having CDs pressed, but now they're all, they can get kind of stuck with them because no one's really buying CDs. They'll download it, and if they want a physical copy of the record, they'll buy the vinyl. Well, you asked about basically the problems with fraud and basically running a label and everything like that. We haven't really had any huge problems with that. And to set things straight, first of all, we absolutely love the hardcore scene and punk scene in Asia. Obviously, we're huge supporters of the geeks from South Korea, and we've gotten so much support from kids in Asia, like Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, like everywhere. And basically, but the only problems we've ever run into was we've had kids order online from some of those countries through our PayPal system, and they'll basically order $80 to $100 worth of merchandise. We send it over immediately. They get it, and then they file a chargeback with PayPal saying they never received the items. Not only do we have to pay back the $80 to $100 that they did in an order, but then we also get like a fine on top of that. We got really, really, really screwed a number of years ago by a kid from Malaysia, and it was funny because we asked some kids that we knew, and it's almost like they knew the kid, and he was walking around with our merchandise on, like the shirts, and he had just ripped us off, and that was really heartbreaking because personally, as as a label owner and everything, I absolutely love hearing from kids from all around the world. Like, I love the support that we get in Central and South America. I love the support that we get from Asia and whatnot. And we really want to reach out to those kids and say, like, we want them to be into our label. We want them to be into our bands. We think we want to help them have the opportunity to build their scenes as well and to, like, bring things fast to those countries. And for somebody to rip us off, like, once in a while on things like that, it's just, like, kind of really heartbreaking because we would never, ever rip anyone off. We're really, we really take it personally, and we really try to make sure every kid that orders from our label is completely happy. And it really ruins, like, not my day, not my week, whatever. I get really bummed out if anyone is not totally happy with something they get from Think Fast. So, we're not ripping people off, and we don't want to be ripped off either. It's hard to do a label as it is, and dump all this money into it, and then kids, screw you over. It's kind of, a bad deal. I really think that, labels still have an incredible part in, promoting and putting out good punk and hardcore records and stuff like that. And, bands shouldn't expect from the moment that they start, record a demo that they're going to be on the biggest label in hardcore. You know what I mean? That's, like, totally unrealistic, and, that shouldn't be, in your minds yet. You should be able to put the hard work in there. A few years ago, you saw many labels sprout out, especially in the United States, like all over the United States, with all these, like, smaller labels, which I think is really cool. Like, kids were trying to do their part to promote bands and everything like that. But a lot of those labels fizzled out over time. They didn't last because, and I truly believe that one of the biggest problems that they had was that they wanted to do a label for recognition, and just to be, like, part of the scene, and basically, like, oh, I know that dude, he runs this label, what's the point? So those are the same labels that would sign bands and, promise these bands, like, even, like, small bands that were working hard and touring and stuff, that they were going to do their record and get them out and everything like that. But the band would record, the label would sit on the recording for months and months and months. Then they would put out, they would press the record, and then basically take pre-orders for the record. And then when the records came in, they weren't sending it to the kids because they didn't have the money to send them out. So kids would wait. Like, you used to hear people, "Where's my record? Where's this? I pre-ordered this 8 months ago. Why haven't I received it yet?" How can you expect to run a label? So if you're in a new band and you want to get your name out there, make sure that you're signed to a label that basically, is doing it for the right reasons, that has the ability to get your record out there. Imagine recording in January, and then a label promising you that it's going to come out in a few months, and then it's not out a year later. I mean, that happens, and it used to happen like a ton. I understand it costs a lot of money, but these labels used to promise people, the world, and then they never delivered, and a lot of those labels fizzled out. This past September was our 10-year anniversary. Sure, we're not the biggest hardcore label in the world by any means, but we're proud of the fact that for the last 10 years, a lot of the same kids order every single one of our releases. I know the people that are ordering our records, they've been ordering since like day one, and to have that constant support from these people is awesome. It makes me proud that I think we're doing something right, because the same kids are coming back to promote, to support our releases, because like I said before, we put out records that we like. If we're not going to spend hours and hours after going to work all day on another job, we're not going to sit on the floor and put together records and send out hundreds of pre-orders for a band that we don't give a shit about. We want to be into it as well, and help promote a band that we love. So, that's how I feel about it. Some of these labels that don't put forth a real effort to get a record out in a timely manner are really hurting, especially the younger bands that are trying to get out on the road and do things. And so that's basically what I think about that. When I first got into hardcore, started listening in the late 80s, going to my first shows in the early 90s and stuff like that. And then as time went by, I used to really, really hate when all the older kids would say, things aren't like what they used to be, and things like that. I'm like, come on, you have to find, the genuine, sincere bands now, and I just really hate that mentality when people want to say that everything was better when they got into it and stuff like that. So I've always never subscribed to having that attitude. However, things have recently. There are definitely some huge changes. You mentioned earlier to me too about how hard it is to, sell like a CD or music, because kids just want shirts. I mean, it's like kids would rather have a shirt than the actual music from the band. It's like really, really weird, and it's just the only problem I have now is that it's so easy to get a great recording. It's so easy to basically get exposure worldwide that newer bands almost expect to be the next big hardcore band, and it shouldn't even be about that. It should be about putting out music for, even if one kid checks out your band and it has a positive impact on their lives, then that should be the goal. You know what I mean? Stop trying to be a rock star. If you're getting into punk and hardcore to be a rock star, you're definitely in it for the wrong reasons. I have no problem with people who are successful. I have no problem with bands that blow up and are, big successes and tour all over the world. I think that's unbelievably amazing. But the fact that every band wants to, a lot of bands want to put very little work into thinking, very little work into becoming, an established band, and almost think that they deserve it, and that they, just wait for it to happen instead of having the ambition and the initiative to actually go out and do it for themselves. I want to thank you so much for, doing this interview and everything like that. Just, it was awesome to talk to you and everything. Basically, my message to the kids in Asia, like you said, you got to do something positive for your scene. No matter how small or how big, you got to put the time and the energy. If you really believe in something, you have to, get behind it and do your best to put out 100% something that you can stand behind. You know, like you said, the geeks are coming to the Philippines. Go to those shows. Tell your friends. Tell the younger kids that, you know, that they might have an interest in seeing like a band like this. You know, a band like this could change a kid's life. You know what I mean? You know, earlier on, you know, we used to like make demo tapes for younger kids in the scene, or kids that we thought, hey, maybe this kid skateboarding down the street would be somebody that would get into, you know, what we're into, because we really believe in this stuff. So we would make like mixtapes of our favorite bands, and we would give it to these kids. And you know what? They'd end up at a show, you know, a local show that was coming, and they would be like, "Wow, man, I never saw anything like this before." And you know, even if your scene is small and maybe you're not getting the recognition that you think you deserve, and or whatever, and you have like maybe one or two bands from where you are, and you know the shows are, you know, 20, 30 kids, keep at it. It doesn't matter if there's 5 kids or 1,000 kids at your show. You know, if everyone there is in it for the right reasons, that's awesome. One thing that I think is absolutely amazing that's happened over the last several years, first of all, it's my belief that hardcore kids in these other countries, in Asia, all over Asia, you know, Central and South America, and in Europe and stuff like that, you know, when a band comes to their town, or you know, an American band, you know, comes and tours in their area, you know, they all come out to these shows. And a lot of kids in the United States take these shows for granted, and they won't go see a band or that's on tour. They'll wait for a big festival to go see all their favorite bands, but they won't go to support like a local show or anything like that. But the best thing I've heard, you know, over the years, was kids down in like Central and South America, and I think this is my message to Asia too, is these kids, they used to save up for like a year, put all their money together, and they would bring one of their favorite bands from the United States to their country. They, you know, we know that it's hard for, you know, bands to tour all around the world. These kids wanted to see bands like Have Heart or Outbreak or The First Step or bands like that. So these kids would work to put all their money together to bring their favorite bands, and in that way, not only did they see their favorite bands if they couldn't travel to go to to the United States to see their bands, those bands, they would bring them to their country. Their local bands would play with them. They became friends with these bands. They get to, you know, get their music out and brought back to the States, or brought back to, you know, other parts of the world, just for like putting the time and the energy into, you know, bringing these bands to their area. I thought that was so unbelievable. You know, that's like kids doing, like saying, you know, fuck it, like we really want to see this band. So I don't care if we all have to work for a year to put the money together to pay for their plane tickets or whatever to get here, or we'll never be able to see them. So, you know, you have the opportunity to basically, you know, work as hard as you can and make the scene what you want it to be. And if you just give like a half-assed effort, or you give up on it, then, you know, you're going to get, you know, what you put into it. But it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Like, you know, the Warzone song, United Worldwide. Speaking from Think Fast Records, we support all the kids around the world. We support all the local scenes. We'll send, you know, releases down to some of these different countries, if, you know, and just get the word out that, you know, we want kids to be into, you know, our releases and everything, and to check out these bands that, you know, might have an impact on their lives or whatever, and just so that all of it with us and the bands that we promote, and in turn their scene builds as well. So that's basically my message, and thanks again for having me. I think this was absolutely awesome to be able to do an interview this way. One funny note about you talking about how, you know, interviews used to be like a different way or whatever. Now we're doing it on Skype and all the social networking to promote and everything. Fred, who used to play drums for a band that we put out a long time ago called Not a Chance, he was also in Fired Up. He used to make a joke, and we used to say, oh, Not a Chance needs to have a website. He said, Minor Threat didn't have a website, so we're not having a website. I thought that was like one of the funniest things. But so but now it's almost like a given. You have to have a lot of these social networking sites to basically help promote these labels, the releases and the bands and everything like that. So, good luck to all the kids out there. Go see the Geeks. If you've never seen the Geeks before, you will absolutely be blown away. They are what hardcore is all about, okay? They are the epitome of, the most sincere band that's out there, and they've been doing it for a very, very long time. So go out and support that band.